Welcome to the X Block.
Am I right, Marine? Sir, yes, sir! Then listen up.
You're listening to the X Block. I'm Jared, he's Caleb. Let's get into it.
You are listening to an X Block podcast special. I'm Jaren, and I'm here with Caleb.
Hey,
And we are joined by special guest, Levin.
Yo, hey.
Yo, hey. That's his new intro. It's Yo, hey. I fucking love that one. Most people, it's greetings. Most is what's up, guys. But Levin's is Yo, hey.
I just took what you said and switched it.
It's fucking awesome. Oh, it did? Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
We brought him in as kind of our expert on other games that we absolutely would not play. And today we're going to be giving our top 5 favorite games of all time.
Yeah, each of us. And Jaren copies me about everything. And so we had to get in a third voice here. Someone much better than Jaren. Far superior in every way. Older, wiser. Boy Levin. Known him for a long time. Jaren just met him 5 minutes ago. But, hoping he works out here and doesn't, fuck up.
I'm going to fuck up immediately. I mean, honestly.
I think he went up to a good start with Yo Hey. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life.
No, y'all are fucked up immediately because this is an Xbox podcast and I don't have an Xbox.
That's why you're here. We need people to shit on you and not us for our opinions. Deflect.
Yeah, then y'all are going to shit on my opinions. But, let's get into this.
Oh, he wants to start right away. Essentially, the ground rules were, which we didn't inform Levin of at all, which is perfect.
Oh, great.
That you couldn't pick a game that was like 5 games in one, like the Master Chief Collection or like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So I'm assuming you didn't do that, Levin.
No, I didn't do that.
All right, so we're good then.
I thought about the Master Chief Collection, but I'm not stupid, sometimes. So I didn't choose that because I knew that Jaren that would ruffle some of his feathers, literally.
I feel like it just would have ruffled other people's feathers. I would have been fine with it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You're out here talking about rules right now, so I didn't say anything about the rules.
That's true. I feel like we should let our guest go first and give us his number 5, and then we'll kind of just work our way across.
Oh, God.
Okay, top 5 games of all time. For the record. This is for the record. So whatever you say here goes forever until we have another one of these in 20 years.
Oh, God. I literally just changed this list this morning.
I guess you're really confident.
Okay, so my number 5 game of all time, PS2 exclusive, Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3 Fez.
Oh my God. God, dude. 30 people just dropped off listening. Tell me about Shin Megami Tensei 3? Is that it?
You almost got it, Caleb.
I feel like if I say it too many times, I'm going to summon a demon or like an archon or some
You
shit.
can just call it Persona 3 Fez.
Okay, Persona 3 Fez. What is so special about why is this of all the games in the top 5 ever?
Okay, so I guess I'll start by saying I grew up playing a lot of JRPGs, but the problem though is that after such a long time, so many of them kind of just became so samey. Like, I know before we talked before this show about stopping with the whole Lord of the Rings talk, but like so many RPGs fell into just Tolkien-esque dragons and wide open fields and all that shit.
Yeah.
Persona 3 was this moment of like, what if we like just urbanized everything and modernized everything? And it's just like, I mean, obviously so much anime shit just deals with high schoolers anyway. But like, what if it was just like, hey, we took the high school element and like made an RPG based around that. So there's your dungeon crawling, but also we added in the life sim aspect of it. So whenever you see any current game that's like, hey, build up your friendship with this person, you can blame Persona 3 and also 4 for that.
Oh, I do blame it. But Persona really, like, especially 5 and 4 are like really beloved games. And I know there were a lot of JRPGs in the PS1 for the PS1 era. And you're saying this one really just like went against the grain and like changed up a lot of systems and innovated and like brought it to a high school with like, and it's a deep dungeon crawler kind of JRPG.
Yeah, so like Persona 1 and 2 obviously existed before that, but like those games were basically just dungeon crawlers. Once you had Persona 3 add in the social life elements, that's where that series really, really found its place. And then that's where then a lot of its influence grew into the rest of the industry. It's funny though, because like I kind of liked Persona 4 and then I hated 5. That's a whole other, I'm not going to dig into that. That's going to be too long of a conversation.
Oh no, we wouldn't understand anyway. My last question I had about this, are there any like really standout characters that really drove this whole friendship aspect home, or is it just the system, like the system of the friendship kind of thing that it introduces, or are there like really really deep characters that you get to know over like 90 hours, as these games usually are that long.
There's some pretty deep characters. I think it's mostly the system. Persona 4 does better with the characters and then worse with the system. 3, I think it's mainly just the fact that it is that day-to-day calendar system of like Monday, going to school, you can either choose to stay awake during class and then gain your intelligence points, or you can choose to fall asleep during class so that you have more energy to do dungeon crawling at night. And that push and pull.
Yeah, I see. I'm not super familiar with the Persona games, but I know some, like that kind of element of them. That's pretty cool. And so this is a PS2 game.
Yeah, it's only really on PS2. Like, there was a PSP port.
Is it like a 70-hour game?
It's like 120.
Oh,
Woo.
God. All right. Woof.
I only have one question about it.
Sure.
Is it better than God of War?
Oh, good lord, yes.
All right, there you go. It's already Game of the Decade, Game of Forever. And that's the end of the X Block podcast.
All right. Hey, see you guys.
No, I'm just playing. We got to get through the rest of our list that are all better than God of War 2.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, by the way, IGN just did this big thing where they had this huge vote on their website for greatest game of all time. And a God of War 2018 won. Don't know how. Could list for many reasons, but anyway. We're going to reference that a couple times probably.
There you go. So we started off with Leavin'. We got Persona 3 Fez sitting at number 5. Now I'll throw it over to Caleb. Why don't you go ahead, Caleb?
Okay, all right. So I took about 4 minutes to make my top 5 list. And I guess I'll just start with maybe from my, towards the bottom, and then work my way up to like my favorite. But at number 5 here, we got Dead Space.
Ooh.
Jared, did you have Dead Space on your list?
I do not. It was in my top 15, though.
Yeah, so Dead Space, not the biggest blockbuster game, especially the original, but a real cult classic horror game, third person, and it does so much that it's going to be hard to like condense all this. But it's about a mechanic, Isaac Clarke, who goes to a mining ship called the Ishimura. That was like strange. It got like his girlfriend was on the ship and it was abandoned, or it was like something happened. And so he goes to explore it with a small crew. And basically he discovers that this ship is infested with necromorphs, which are this alien species that it's not really a species. The humans turn into them. It's a whole thing. But they're basically dead morphed humans that grow these big, spiked arms and shit. And Isaac has to use his engineering tools like the plasma cutter and things to chop these things limbs off, and that's the big gameplay mechanic of it. And you wear a suit, the space suit that acts as your HUD on screen. Like the spinal column shows your health, and you have this thing on your back that shows, I think it's some sort of energy that you can use. And like a lot of the games you'll see on my list, it has a big physics component to it. So you have kinesis in this game, and you can like pick up things and throw them around and all that, and it's a big part of solving some puzzles in this game. And it's a big playground for mechanics that you can use. You can throw those things at the necromorphs, and it's a super innovative combat system. And the reason it's on my top 5 really is because it is perhaps the best horror game that has ever been made. That's contentious, but since Resident Evil 4, there hadn't really been a horror game like Dead Space, and it was a sci-fi game as opposed to a grounded kind of horror game on Earth. It took a lot of inspiration from Alien, where like in Alien Nostromo, the ship was like, it's kind of like its own character in the movie. Well, in this one, the Ishimura is kind of its own character, and exploring it and all the different levels and components of it is a big part of the game. And it really nails the atmosphere. There's a religious component to these games with, I think it's like the Unity, I can't remember the church exactly, but it has like the Unity Church, so it's like it has the necromorphs that are the enemies, but then it also has other humans who are the enemies, so it's a lot like Alien in that way. The planet that the ship, the Ishimura, is like next to is really inspired by LV-426 or whatever from Alien, and there's a marker, and it's all super sci-fi, but super horror and atmospheric, that does a lot of things right with UI, and enemy design, weapon design, and the tone and atmosphere of the game.
I feel like when this game first came out, it was kind of like the Alien to Aliens comparison, where people were like, which one's better, Dead Space 1 or Dead Space 2? But I feel like as we've gotten further away from both the games coming out, it's kind of universally agreed on Dead Space 1 is the superior like overall game. Would you like agree with that, Levin?
I kind of go back and forth, but I did find myself going back to Dead Space 1 way more. Like literally, I got so obsessed with Dead Space 1 that I beat it like 4 times on 360, got all the achievements, and then like right after that, got it on PS3, beat it 4 times there, platinumed it. Like, so I've beaten that game like 8 times versus like the 2 times that I beat Dead Space 2. But yeah, like I absolutely agree. It is one of the greatest horror games of all time. I would definitely put it somewhere in like in the top 5. I don't think I put it 1 like you, but
yeah, there are other elements, and it depends on what you're looking for. This one's, like I said, it's a sci-fi, super atmospheric, more focused than Dead Space 2. Dead Space 2 is more of an action horror game to a degree, whereas this one is more of a straight kind of horror game. But it has shooting and combat and stuff. And it's just like the Ishimura and the whole idea of a mechanic being the protagonist, not just some dude or some like, hero kind of person or someone with special skills. And he uses his engineering tools and things to solve specific problems on the ship and use those tools to combat the necromorphs. And just like the interesting ideas that are clearly inspired from Alien, but are really different and just familiar, and they really come together to make a great horror game.
You do make a really, really good point with that. Is probably my low-key favorite thing about Dead Space 1 is that Isaac isn't there to fight necromorphs. He's just there to do his job. Even though he is fighting these necromorphs like pretty damn well by himself, at the end of the day, his job is not to kill the necromorphs. He just wants to fix the ship.
Exactly. Yeah, and find his girlfriend. And I won't get into it, but yeah, the plot is also really good and all that twists and turns toward the end. But yeah, Dead Space is my number 5. I think it's really solid. And I'm not even a super big fan of horror games, as Jared knows. I'm a big baby.
Yeah, it's true. I guess it's time for me to give my 5th game. The way I kind of did my list was like Levin said about how he played Dead Space like 8 times. I kind of did my list based on which games I liked the most, but also which games I have like gone back to and kind of played the most.
If I did that, dude, it would be just Halo games.
So at my 5th spot, as a surprise to probably no one, I've got Grand Theft Auto 5.
Oh, of course, Jaron.
This is the game that, I guess first off, we'll do like Caleb did with like a brief summary. You've got your 3 protagonists, which you can seamlessly transition back and forth during like open world parts of the game. You've got Franklin, Michael, and Trevor. And essentially when they're in like story missions and stuff, it's kind of focused because they're telling you a story that is very like well written and kind of top notch and pretty high budget. They kind of guide you through it and like you switch characters when they want you to, but in the open world you can freely switch characters and kind of do side missions that are for each character, and there's a ton of content. Obviously there's GT Online, which is probably one of the biggest content offerings ever since like World of Warcraft. And I actually do like a lot of the heists and things that they add, as well as the heist focused single player game. And this game actually almost made me feel like I was addicted to video games. Like this was the closest I've ever been. Like it came out on the PS3. What about Modern Warfare 2? Modern Warfare 2, I was just like a teenager. I had nothing else to do. I had like one video game.
Oh, this is as an adult young man.
Yeah, like I was just finishing up high school around this game, I believe, and the PS4 was just about to come out. And I literally had to sell my PS3 2 months before the PS4 came out because I had put like 30 days into Grand Theft Auto 5, I think like 2 months after it had come out.
Yeah, in 29 days. Yeah.
Yeah, something like absolutely absurd. I had like 25 days in like a 52 day like time that the game had been out. Yeah, so I'm really like a big fan of the single player. I think it's got very well written characters like GTA games often do, and I feel like this is the best complete package offering of a GTA game that's ever come out, and that's why it's number 5 on my list.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask you real quick. I had a clarification for this. So that's in your top 5. Is something that prevents it from being in your top 5, or something that's like not so great about it? Like, how do you account for the incredible glitches and server issues and like not being able to start missions, like driving? Remember we had like the ambulance problem. You had to drive the ambulance into the stop zone and it like wouldn't load, and like having to get into your own private server and various NAT code run around ways. Like, how do you account for that in like your top 5?
Yeah, see, the main reason I have this on my top 5 is the campaign, which I've beaten like 3 times from like the 3 times it's been released, but the online definitely did boost it in there. And I think that despite all the bugs, the reason that I still have this in my top 5 is when this game first launched multiplayer-wise, and it used to delete your character all the time. Like my actual rank because it's connected to the social club is like level 620, but my actual like in-game rank, because my character was deleted so many times, is like 200. So it had a ton of bugs, and I still was willing to like go back and play everything that the game was offering me, even though it was still deleting my character.
And would you say that the multiplayer component is really important as opposed to like I guess you say you like it for the single player a lot mostly. But for the multiplayer, it's like a lot of the fun comes from the shenanigans you have with friends in the game.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's also been a cool thing where I've been able to like experience it with different people like 4 times now. Like I started playing in high school, then Dara kind of got into it, which is my sister. We've talked about her before on the podcast. And I played a bunch with her. And then obviously you, Caleb, hadn't played it really before. And then we hopped in and basically played everything that was in the game, start to finish. And then Dara and everybody came back and we started doing like the heists.
Yeah. Levin, have you played GTA 5?
Not 1 second.
That you were the one human on planet
Yes.
Earth, turns out. You are actually the single human. Everyone on the International Space Station is playing it right now, but not you, huh?
He's where they get their sales from that go up every single year. One day he's going to go, and maybe I'll play GTA 5, and he's going to be part of those like 6 million people every year that buy the game.
You're the reason in the June 2022 NPDs that GTA 5 charted in the top 10 again. You're the reason.
No, I did add it to my account on Epic when they gave that for free, but then I never downloaded Epic, so I didn't play it.
Yeah, well, that's a good picture. That's a good one.
All right, well, I guess we'll hop over to number 4 for Levin.
Okay, number 4, Bloodborne.
I had a feeling that was there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I can't applaud, you know? I can't do it.
It's I'm going to let him go on it, but it is the only Dark Souls game or Dark Souls style game that I have ever genuinely wanted to play. So I understand his view on it. And since I trusted him on Yakuza 0, who knows, maybe I'll trust him on Bloodborne one time.
Go ahead, Levin. Give me your defense of Bloodborne top 4. Go ahead.
Okay, so Bloodborne is the first Souls game that really made it click for me. So I got stuck on the second boss of Demon Souls. I said, fuck this. I got stuck on the second boss of Dark Souls. I said, fuck this. I beat the first 2 bosses of Dark Souls 2, but I just didn't care for that game. I said, fuck this. And then I got Bloodborne.
You don't like that one.
It's weird that like I went through that whole process and then I still got Bloodborne day 1 because I'm an idiot. But it worked out really well and it actually ended up really, really clicking for me. The biggest things are they simplify it in a way where you're not just digging through like 20 different versions of the same sword. It's like, okay, no, there is one 2-handed sword. There is one 1-handed sword. And so because they narrow that down, it allowed them to have more variety with the types of weapons that they have. So like,
I see.
Like literally one of the weapons in that game is literally just a giant pizza cutter, the whirligig saw. Like that's the type of like silliness and like craziness that that Bloodborne gets with its weapons, and that basically meant that instead of like 100 different weapons where there's so much overlap of like, oh, you have a broadsword plus 2, you have a broadsword plus 5, like instead of that, it was like, no, all of these weapons are unique. And also with the removal of shields for the most part, it meant that it was a way more offense-focused game, and so they sped up the combat as well. It involves things like dodging and iframes. Like literally, the dodge move in Bloodborne is lifted straight out of Devil May Cry. Like that is the style of like offensive focus that they went with Bloodborne. Also, I don't know how openly I'm allowed to like spoil these games.
You can. We don't care.
Okay. Whatever. Bloodborne,
I don't care.
It's almost 7 years old at this point, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
like 6.5. Bloodborne does a really, really fantastic way of handling its twist, where so a lot of the game is basically taking place in like this Lovecraftian dreamscape, and
Yeah, the castle and the, Victorian architecture and Gothic style and all that shit.
yes, but also the fact that it takes place in a literal dream. And
Okay, see, I didn't know that because I don't know the story, but that makes sense.
yeah, so in Lovecraft's writing, he has like different dimensional shit that usually involves things like either different worlds or dreams that count as different dimensions. And Bloodborne plays a lot with that, with this idea of like, how Lovecraftian is this game actually going to get? And then at one point, like halfway through the game, you fight like a literal Lovecraftian elder god and kill it, which then removes the veil between like humanity seeing what the world actually is and like the Lovecraftian world that actually is. And once you kill that boss, like you all of a sudden you start seeing like giant tentacle monsters everywhere. Yeah, so part of the way it like builds into that twist is pretty early on. There's an area where it's just like, hey, pick up these items, right? You just like see like a glowing orb on the ground, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna pick these items up. And it's a whole list of different parts of an outfit, and it's a whole list of items specifically to get you to stand in that one place. And then all of a sudden, you just start floating magically in the air, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And then you get crushed, and then you lose like half your health. And you're like, what the hell just happened? After you beat that mid-boss that like basically takes down the veil of what we perceive in that world, if you go back to that spot, it was literally just a giant tentacle monster that was standing there the entire time. And if you stand there again, you actually see it pick you up with its hand and crush you. So like, the way that it deals with that, and then now you're going back through the world and seeing, oh, this is how this world actually was the entire time, and I just couldn't see it.
He's kind of selling me on it.
Is it fun to play for you?
Oh yeah, I've beaten that game at least 10 times.
Are you a masochist by chance, sexually speaking?
I can be at the right price.
Okay, so there you go. That explains it.
You heard him though. He failed the other 3 Dark Souls games. I don't know if he's gone back and like beaten them now, but he couldn't do them before, so he could do Bloodborne. So maybe we could actually beat it.
Well, I could. It's just whether I want to.
With what I learned coming off of Bloodborne, I was able to then go back, beat Demon Souls, beat Dark Souls 1 and 2, go on to beat Dark Souls 3, and then even ended up beating Sekiro, which is like one of like the most fuck-off hard games I've ever played. And when I beat Sekiro, my mindset was very much of, I have nothing else to prove. I think I'm done playing hard games now.
Yeah, so you like the action element of it versus the pairing, slower systems of Dark Souls. I heard a lot of people say that about Bloodborne, like that everyone hated Dark Souls, and then you play Bloodborne and it clicks because it's a more action-oriented offensive game, whereas Bloodborne's about parrying and dodging and being slow and deliberate. And also the setting and all that.
Yes, but it's also a thing that, like, if you couldn't get into the regular Souls style, if you get through Bloodborne, it basically opens up your mind enough to be able to go back to those games and go, okay, I better understand those, so now I can actually get into the nuances of that more slower pace.
It's like ayahuasca, where you do it and it opens up like your third eye.
Or your fifth eye, yeah. My last question, though, is Bloodborne, does it stand alone as being that great, which I assume it does, or like is part of the experience its relationship with the other Souls games and how like your ability to go back and play those, or like how it compares, or is it like a real good standalone?
I think it works really well as a standalone because what I found is in the Souls community, the people who like really clicked with Demon Souls and Dark Souls early on first are the people who look at Bloodborne and go, oh, that game is boring, it's too easy. Whereas the people like me, the majority of people who actually played Bloodborne, we got to Bloodborne and went, okay, this is the one that actually makes us understand the rest of them. But it also allows Bloodborne to stand on its own, of separate from the rest of those games.
Yeah, and it is its own story, and people are highly anticipating a sequel.
Yeah,
but
yeah. There's a reason that Bloodborne is like, I think it's the most financially and monetarily successful, I think, of the Dark Souls series.
Yeah.
Whether that was because it was a PlayStation exclusive and that kind of pushed it more forward, but also just the easier like jumping in point for most people.
Yeah. Well, I'm still gonna shit on it, but you put up a solid defense for it.
All right, no problem.
All right, Caleb, hit us with your number 4.
All right, my number 4, and this one is probably the most controversial on my list, just because no one ever suspects the recent games, Jaron. But for number 4 on my list, I put It Takes Two, which people probably did not see coming. And for those people who haven't played it, may be surprised.
That was why I cut it. It was in my final 15 that I got down to, and then I was like, it like hasn't had its time to breathe yet, but I'm glad that you put it in.
Yeah, this is a very special game, and it's a EA game, surprisingly, but it's made by Hazelight, which is the developer, and who was the developer that was founded by Joseph Fares, one of the best game makers working right now, and creative geniuses. And this man, he's the guy, if you've seen the meme of the guy who said, fuck the Oscars, and like held up his middle finger, at the Game Awards, was like, fuck you, fuck the Oscars, that's him. Brilliant man. And he made a game called It Takes Two, and it is a co-op game. You can't be played by yourself, unless you're really good at using, one hand on each controller. But it's a 2-player game, and you can see the other person's screen on your screen. And then it's like kind of split, maybe like kind of like a Lego game, I think, one of the modern Lego games. Anyway, this game is about two characters, Cody and May, who are this couple living in this kind of foresty area. And they are getting divorced because they can't stand one another anymore. I think Cody's kind of like a gardener and does some other things, maybe mechanic stuff. And May is a smarter individual than Cody and does her own work that, like, I think she may be in the medical field, maybe not. I don't know. But it keeps her away and their relationship's just not working out. And so the game is about them through their daughter, because their daughter is having to deal. They have one daughter who's having to deal with their divorce. And she, is like crying about it. She's upset. And she basically, I think, what does she do, Jaren? Like triggers some spell book or something?
Yeah, she cries on two dolls with the spell book, and her tears put their bodies into her two dolls.
There you go. It puts them into the two dolls. And so now Cody and May are stuck as like two dolls. And it starts off in their shed, and they're outside their house. And the whole point of this game is them trying to get back into their normal bodies. And to do so, they have to work together. And there's so much I can say about this game. First of all, their guide through this process is the book becomes an actual character who just appears out of nowhere. And he's just like this really sexy, kind of really fucking out there, like Spanish bookman. To where he'll pop up.
I would
and he'll
say
be
he's sexual. He's not necessarily sexy.
I don't know, he's sexy, Jaren, because he'll pop up and he'll be like, "Whoa, you need to fix your relationship." And they're like, "What the fuck are you doing here, man?" And he's like, "Love finds a way, and now you will find a way." And you're like, "Where do you go?" And he's like, "I do not know, but love finds a way." And then he'll disappear and that's literally how he sounds. And so
it
and
was
then he'll
actually
just
spot on.
And he'll start gyrating his hips just for no reason, randomly, And so he guides them through this journey, and he's slowly trying to help them, mend their broken relationship. But the gameplay itself functions in a way that I've never seen before. Because I guess at the bare bones minimum of it, it's a platformer, because you're a very small toy, or not, I guess toy doll, whatever. But you're going through various levels that range from the shed to the tree outside to inside a snow globe to in their daughter's bedroom to inside their attic. And everything has like a theme, and every new area you go to, and there's like 10, you get a different ability. So it's like their abilities function together. So like one person will have a wax that like they shoot with like this gun, and it sprays everywhere and sticks on surfaces. And then the other person will have to like have like a launcher that fires like flaming whatever matches, and it like burns the wax, and they have to work together to get through various obstacles. Or one person has a nail gun that they have to shoot into walls, and the other person has the like swing that goes on, that they can swing off those nails to go reach higher platforms. And it gets just really intricate and crazy. And so the dynamic settings and the dynamic gameplay, because it turns from like first person shooter to platformer to dungeon crawler at one point to all these different things. And that combined with how it looks, because the game is one of the best looking games ever made, and it's one of the smoothest games ever made. It stands up to literally, like, I know people can be as nostalgic as they want about their favorite fucking platformer. I don't care. I've played all those too. This game is objectively superior in terms of how it handles, how it looks, the ray tracing, level design, variety and level, different game. It's done every game that you played as a platformer, but it's done it better, and it's only 1/12 of the game. And it has a story about them, mending their broken relationship that's actually really poignant and really sad. It's like humorous on the surface, but really deep, because it's about divorce and their child dealing with their separation. And like while they're in their toy dolls, they're both like asleep. And like one person's asleep at their desk and one's asleep at the couch. And the daughter's like trying to talk to them, thinking one of them's listening, but they're asleep, or thinking that, like they're asleep and they won't wake up for some weird reason. And it gets really dark, and it ends. I won't spoil the ending or whatever, but it's just a really solid experience that you should play, that you have to play with someone else. And it's arguably, and I would make the argument that it's the best platformer ever made. But, that's just me.
All right, I'm pretty convinced in Caleb's point, just because I've also played the game and I was close to putting it on my list. I don't know if Levin has played it though. So do you have any like questions about it, Levin, that you'd want Caleb to answer?
I haven't played it myself, but I have no problem with it being in anyone's top 5, just because the main thing I keep hearing about it is that it is arguably the greatest co-op game ever. So
that's true. That's, probably. You can make that argument.
And like the one thing I would agree with Caleb on is the amount of different gameplay styles and elements that are put into one game that you'd think all of them together wouldn't work, but then they all blend so seamlessly together and fit within the story that's being told. It's really like a remarkable experience.
Yeah, it's a feat, and it's like a lot of these games in our top 5 list, or at least mine. It's many things together. It's not just one thing. It's like the sound design is immaculate, the level design is immaculate, the color scheme and like the lighting is immaculate, the gameplay is immaculate. The different types of gameplay are all individually immaculate. The characters and like the story is immaculate. Like all these things together, and at co-op, which no one can ever make work except Hazelite, I guess.
So how exactly does the co-op work? 'Cause I know that when you buy a copy of the game, you can gift or you give someone else a code.
Yeah, you only have to buy one copy for 2 people. The one person gets a code that they can give to their friend to get the game. And the co-op, you just go into a lobby, you hop in together. You get to choose which character you want to be, either May or Cody, and then you just have you can each see what each other's screen looks like, and just go around and do shit.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Oh, and there's games within the game. I forgot to mention that. Every level has its own mini games. Jaren and I played chess in the middle of a random ass level because it had a chessboard you can play chess on. Jaren and I, they have in an art level just sitting around, they have a printer that you can draw on. You can go jump on paint, and then the paint sticks to your feet. And you can go draw on a piece of paper and then stomp on a button to print out your painting. And a billion other things like that. You can play a piano, all kinds of shit.
Yeah, it's really just a well-rounded and tight but so expansive experience.
Yeah, it's solid. So yeah, that's my number 4. But I think I've said everything I need to say about it at this point. It's just if you haven't played it, you might not understand why it's in my top 5. But I stand by that game. I don't think there's a better platformer.
That's fair. At my number 4, a game that has none of those tightness and elements that Caleb just talked about, but its overall charm puts it in my list, and that's the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
Oh, dude, I thought about putting that one on there, Jaren, and I didn't. Go ahead, Jaren. You tell me about Skyrim. Go ahead.
It's the game that got me into RPGs, which is probably my favorite genre of games now. And although its mainline story is only 12 hours long, it's kind of one of the first games that I played that had such an expansive world where no matter where I went, I found something to do. And it's one of the most iconic RPGs of the last few generations. I was really heavily debating between putting this one on my list or The Witcher 3.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say it's between Fallout 3, The Witcher 3 and Skyrim.
Yeah, I had all 3 of those on my top 15, and I ultimately settled with Skyrim because it was the game that just put everything together for me and I got to create my own character, which kind of gave me a sense of me participating in the world. And I had something happen that while I was playing through it, I got about 60 hours in, and I let my sister play the game, and then it was either her or something that we were doing together accidentally saved over my entire character. And I was like, oh no, now I'm going to play this entire long ass game again. And I actually had more fun playing through it the second time because I got to experience all these things that I had missed because I didn't really understand how the game worked at the start yet. And yeah, the concepts of the way that you can fight in so many different ways. You can choose to go full sword combat. You can choose to go full magic combat. You can do a mix of both, or you can
one-handed and shield. Great sword, staff.
Yeah, any of that kind of stuff. And then Caleb said, physics are also an interesting part of the game where you can just get stomped by a giant and just shot into the moon. And then you come back down, or you can bait other people over to the giant and he'll stomp on them and send them away. And there's just all these little things that you can get into that you might not even get into in the game overall.
Yeah,
little side quests.
Just scale a vertical sheer cliff using the physics.
Yeah. There's so many different things that you can do. And yeah, it's a buggy game, but at the time it came out, it did so many different things that just either hadn't been done before or hadn't been done to the level that Skyrim did them.
That's fair, man. Leva, did you play Skyrim? I assume you did.
Skyrim is one of those games that I put a lot of time into and then never finished because it's just so open-ended of what you can do in it.
Yeah, it's not about finishing, really.
So I guess my little story on this is that to see Skyrim take over just culturally in real time, it was kind of mind-blowing. So around that time, I had gotten into school for art, and just seeing that game come out when everyone was fully attentive, everyone's paying attention in school. That game comes out, the whole first week, everyone has their laptop out playing Skyrim. The second week, half those people show up. The other half still playing Skyrim in class. By the end of that semester, most of the people had dropped out because they spent too much time playing Skyrim. Like, that takeover was just mind-blowing to see in real time.
They know it's important.
Skyrim ruined lives. It was so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great game. Totally about the exploration and the emergent gameplay is what is important about that game. It has a story, and the story is great, but that's not what it's about. And getting like the different shouts, and it has so many components to its gameplay. And it's just really great. Excluding if you include the expansions, like the however many expansions they have that really round out the final one, really rounds out your experience as the Dragonborn. And I got all the achievements in that game twice, and it's super fun.
And you also didn't play it until like 6 or 7 years after it had come out.
I played it when the special edition came out, and that's my first experience. And I liked it so much that immediately after getting all the achievements, I went back to the 360 version, played that, and got all the achievements because I had so much fun with it.
That was another thing that like made me really think about it and having it on my list, was that I played this game when it came out and it meant this much to me, and that when you played it way later, you still had that connection with it that I figured you would at least have it in like your top 10.
It's true. I thought about putting this one in here instead of like Dead Space or something, but I decided not to, and I'm glad I did since you put it on yours. But yeah, it's a really special game, and for my own kind of particularities, I'm a fan of high fantasy. That really appeals to me as opposed to something more grounded in like the real world boring shit. And so that also is something that draws my attention, but it's still on its own regardless. And people consider it, one of the at least top 5 maybe RPGs of all time, especially more traditional RPGs. Some people may consider Mass Effect an RPG, which it is, but I don't know, man. There's something about like Fallout and, Skyrim that's more RPG-y and less action-y than Mass Effect.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2 was another game that was close to my list.
Yeah, I didn't make it on mine either. I considered Mass Effect, but I was like, I have to do the trilogy. I can't do one Mass Effect game. And even then, I would choose 3, but that's another conversation for another time.
But now we're getting into our top 3s, and Levin is going to start us off with his top 3.
Okay, so this is the one that you're all going to shit on me the most for.
It's a Nintendo
if
game?
you're going to talk about big, wide-open games that are heavily physics-based, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild? All right, Levin.
I was hoping my Skyrim pick was close to his Breath of the Wild pick, and it's exactly what I wanted.
Let's see. I want to see if... I don't even want to shit on you, because I want to go in with an open mind, but I want to see if you say what I've heard, which I assume is why people like it. But you go ahead, though. I'm interested.
Okay, so the key thing to note about my love for Breath of the Wild is that I don't care about the Zelda series.
I was about to mention, try to interrupt you. I was going to be like, by the way, when you're doing this, I'm really interested. Like, compare this to your experiences with the other Zelda games and why this one stands out, because I am interested, because I haven't played them all. I've seen a lot of them played or played through, but I haven't played them all. But yeah, so you're saying you don't even like the other Zelda games?
Yeah, so we can't hit him on him. We can't call him like a nostalgia-driven pick. He actually really likes it.
He just played this game and was like, oh shit.
Yeah, so like a key thing about pretty much all the games on my list, or besides Bloodborne, is that I'm usually not a fan of a series. I'm usually the fan of like 1 or 2 games from a series, and then like the rest of the series can like fuck off for me. But with Zelda 1, I love the idea of Zelda 1. Zelda 2 is really cool as well. It does its own like really weird thing, and then Link to the Past was cool. Ocarina of Time was incredible and super influential. But from Ocarina of Time onwards, it kind of just felt like they were just redoing Ocarina of Time over and over again with like slight variants. And so
I know they kind of were, but you don't like Majora's Mask?
I have a lot of respect for Majora's Mask. But like, there's also something about it that just kind of feels like it feels like an official ROM hack for Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, they did use the same engine, but they did add that whole time component of it with the moon and everything. But yeah, go with the Breath of the Wild thing though. Yeah, go with that.
So you're telling me they were being Nintendo?
Yeah.
See, this is not the forum for me to argue against you with that. But yeah, Breath of the Wild was, I guess, pun not intended, was a big breath of fresh air for me, where that's a game that just basically drives off of your curiosity. Like, the quality of your experience playing Breath of the Wild is going to be heavily based on 2 things. How curious are you as a player to like try everything? And my mind blanked, I forgot what the other one was. But the point being that you have to let your curiosity... Oh, no, the other thing was that if you're creative as a person, then you're going to find this game to be better. Because it's not about its swordplay the way that other Zelda games are. It's about using the toolbox or the sandbox of what everything that's in that game to do what you want to do, right? So
Well, I know it's not about the sword play because your sword breaks, so you can't use it.
that's the thing of like, but like, there's crazy things that you can do with that. So for example, the way that weather ties into it. So like, if there's a thunderstorm, if you have a metal sword on you, you're probably going to get hit by lightning, right? But you can tell when lightning is about to strike. You can throw your sword, and so if you time the throwing of your sword at an enemy with the lightning strike, then the lightning hits the sword, and then the lightning hits the enemy. Like, you have to play around
That's
with it.
pretty
It's
cool.
not just about... So there's a lot of people who came away from Breath of the Wild disappointed because they just wanted that old Zelda, I just want to do my sword play thing. Breath of the Wild is about... There are 100 different systems that are just layering on each other and just playing off of each other. So like, if you want to climb a winter mountain and you realize, oh, my character is freezing to death. Okay, put on warmer clothes. Okay, cool. But you could also do things like, if you have a fire sword and equip that, your fire sword's going to keep you warm, right? Or if...
Like Charmander in Pokemon.
I'm surprised. That's a very specific episode. I don't know. I'm surprised.
You know what I'm talking about. And Leva knows. Jared was over there like, what the fuck? But Leva
No, I
knows,
knew.
dude.
I knew. I've seen Pokemon.
Oh, you just haven't seen SpongeBob. You fucking... All
Yeah,
right, go ahead,
I
Leva.
just haven't seen SpongeBob. If you have a fire sword on, does it turn the snow to ice and then you slide down the mountain?
No,
Oh,
but
too
you
bad.
can slide down the mountain anyway. Of like, there's a mechanic where you can, where if you're running, you can take your shield down and put it on the ground and then like slide on it, right? And so literally, I believe I told Jaren the story of a while ago where I think Steep, the snowboarding game, came out on PlayStation Plus, and I was like, okay, I can download Steep, check that out, or I can just boot up Breath of the Wild, climb the highest snowy mountain in the game, and then just snowboard down my shield all the way down it. And it's like, okay, I spent 30 minutes doing that, and it was just like, I didn't even really think to know that that's a thing. I just thought in my head, okay, what if I combine these two things? Let's see what happens. And then it actually worked, right? Breath of the Wild is entirely about going, okay, I know that all these systems exist. How do they interact with each other? And so, like, one of like the most common puzzles that people love showing about how Breath of the Wild works is that there's a puzzle where a ball drops down into a maze and you have to tilt your controller to tilt the ball through the maze, and everyone gets frustrated by that. But if you just turn your controller all the way around, the bottom of the maze is flat. And so if you just let the ball fall on the flat side, you can just roll the ball across without even doing anything. Like, it's just entirely about thinking, can I do this? Trying it, and then realizing that 9 out of 10 times, it will just work. And just having your mind blown by seeing how that works.
Did you ever get your bow and arrow and shoot an apple off a tree?
I've done that, yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's fucking Zelda, man.
Or just like running with your horse, doing a backflip off your horse, going into slow motion with the bow and arrow, shooting a bunch of enemies, and then hang gliding back down onto my horse and then keep on riding.
Pretty hardcore. Do you like the moment-to-moment enemy fighting and gameplay? Do you feel like the exploration and design of the game limits the combat aspects, like shit's too spread out? And the overall, I don't know, design of the story and the world does it service or does it not service the gameplay?
You could argue that the combat is maybe a bit weaker, but that's mainly because most people think about combat in Zelda games as that swordplay. But also, you could straight up, that game does have open spaces in a way where you can kind of just avoid most combat. And there are a lot of people who get caught up in the, well, if my sword breaks, then why am I doing the combat? Which is funny because you can always just get more swords. But yes, it does take away from things like that core combat. It takes away from things like the story being told. But at the same time, I don't think, in a very similar way like we talked about with Skyrim, I don't think of that game as being, oh, I need this story. The story is there, but like the story kind of doesn't matter. Like, you're there because you want to fuck around.
I don't even want to argue with you because I'm just like, I'm kind of interested in your opinion on Breath of the Wild as someone who hasn't played. I've seen it played through, again, one a streamer on Twitch, but I haven't played it myself, and I'm interested how that feels overall. Because the argument is the experience in Skyrim and all your exploration and doing all this shit lines up with your building the legend of the Dragonborn and like who you are as who your character's supposed to be. So like you going around doing all these random quests and doing all this shit is part of you going across your journey as the Dragonborn in this land. But for Zelda, is that like something that he's doing? Or is it like, I guess it is when you're exploring the dungeons, right? There's like 6 dungeons in the game or something like that, right? Are those really fun?
It's 4 core dungeons, which are like very different from like traditional dungeons. I did find those to be really fun, but it's largely doing is there's the 4 core dungeons that are based on different beasts, different animals, and then there's the 120 shrines, which are basically mini dungeons. And it's like a lot of people were iffy on, oh, there's only 4 dungeons, and also these dungeons are very different in style from traditional Zelda dungeons. But at the same time, it's also like, you also have 120 mini dungeons. There's so much in that game that just gives you that ability to mess around with like how things can puzzle out, and realizing that like, even though there's like 1 or 2 intended ways to solve a puzzle, there's like 10 different ways that you can actually solve it if you like really be creative about how these systems work.
Yeah, I saw some of that when I was watching a stream, how there are multiple ways to solve puzzles, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot to say about that game, but it's got a lot to say for it, a lot of positives.
I am happy that Breath of the Wild has come out, because it means when the next Elder Scrolls game comes out, they can take all those like cool interactive elements that Breath of the Wild has and then put them in a Elder Scrolls game with the actual story of an Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah, it sees Breath of the Wild benefits from emergent gameplay. It's not about what you're supposed to be doing in the game. It's about you creating your own fun through the systems that they give you, which is a big part of like my list.
Yeah, it's like Minecraft, but like more distilled down and like with bigger and better elements added to it.
The only thing really holding it back, one of the main, it just could just not be a Wii U game, you know? It could just not. It could not be.
Well, maybe the next one will
be on the same engine in 2023. Yeah.
the issue with that one is if they just go back to the traditional Nintendo thing of, hey, we're gonna make the game again.
I imagine it'll be great for its various reasons. Yeah. Breath of the Wild 2 though, or Breath of the Wild 1. There you go.
All right, Caleb, hit us with your number 3.
Okay, number 3. I'm gonna put this one in here. It may be my second favorite game or first favorite game, but I'm going to go ahead and list it third here. I have Red Dead Redemption 2 for a number of reasons. Red Dead Redemption 2 came out in like 2018, right, Jeremy?
Yep.
Rockstar game. Last one by the Hauser brothers, I think, correct?
Yep.
Written by the Hauser brothers. Very, very special game. So this game is a prequel to 2010's, I believe, Red Dead Redemption, but it is set before. It's like, it's Red Dead Redemption 2, but it's a prequel to the first game. So it's not actually like, a sequel. Anyway. It's about a character named Arthur Morgan, and he is part of Dutch Vanderland's gang, from Dutch Vanderland being the guy you're hunting down through the entire first game. And the game is about you as a cowboy, or I guess a gangster, a bank robber, as part of this gang, running away from the law. And a big point of this game is its realism. There's so much to say about this game, it's almost hard to organize. It's a very realistic type of game. It's not like a running around doing crazy shit like normal games. It's like you can brush your horse, to keep it cleaner. You can, walking in mud makes your character step differently because you're walking. It's a really, really grainy kind of in the weeds game. But that's part of what you see as the deep design that went into this game. Like, it's perhaps the best designed game ever in terms of just the attention to detail about all in the world. And you go along with this gang, and it's the themes of this game are like, industrialism versus the deteriorating nature of the landscape, the coming of technology. And a lot of these themes are explored through the people in your gang. So Dutch Vanderland and his kind of trying to come to terms with the fact that that their lifestyle is rapidly diminishing, and they're kind of on the run. Their backs against the wall. There's nowhere else left to go, and yet he's trying to keep the gang together. And he has that thing of like, Arthur, we just need a little more money. And you're like, it's kind of a whole, it's depressing the entire time because it seems like everything's getting tighter and tighter around you as the law closes in. And yeah, you have John Marston from the first game, who's a younger man as part of your gang. And then a lot of the themes of the game are explored through your interactions with the various characters. Like Charles Smith is a black Indian man. And you explore the themes of, the diminishing Indian population and their way of life with, hunting buffalo on the plains and various things through interacting with Charles and him interacting with other Indian tribes. I don't remember their names in the game. And then like Sadie Adler, who's a woman bounty hunter. She was a housewife and now she's a bounty hunter, and she's like the toughest person in the gang. And so it explores like the strong feminine side of that through her character, as well as John Marston's wife. And and Arthur Morgan has his own arc of it's called Red Dead Redemption because he is an evil person through the course of the game starts to become redeemed and is trying to do something good with his life. And then later, he gets tuberculosis and he starts succumbing to that, and he's dying, and he starts getting more ill and coughing and stuff. And he's at the end trying to escape this life and try to do something good as everything is collapsing around him and the gang is falling apart and people are dying. And, Dutch is becoming more and more kind of sadistic and desperate. And it's just an RPG a cowboy 1890s, I think, setting. And it's an expansive, vast open world that's highly explorable with so much to do, a lot of secrets. Everything about the game screams just like attention to detail. Almost like everything you ever do in that game or everything you ever see took someone 10 hours to craft, at least, or more. And it's just one of the best RPGs ever made. And without going over the entire story and how long that is and where it takes you and the overarching themes and how those play out and the conclusion of Arthur's story and how that then 2/3 of the way through the game leads into sort of an epilogue where you play as John Marston, and it kind of leads directly into Red Dead Redemption 1. And the last thing I kind of have to say about it really is Red Dead Redemption 2 does something which is great, which is that it doesn't really benefit from the first game. Like, it doesn't really, it does, but that's not really the point. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the kind of sequel/prequel that all it does is makes the first game even better. Like, Red Dead Redemption 2 is fantastic on its own. But when you play Red Dead Redemption 2 and you've played Red Dead Redemption 1 and you're like, okay, I loved Red Dead Redemption 1. But then you play Red Dead Redemption 2, you go back and play Red Dead Redemption 1. And with how seamlessly they made this context fit in and not feel like after the fact retcon bullshit, but how seamlessly it flows together and gives way deeper meaning to the interactions in that game. It makes the first game that much better. And I would argue it's one of the best games ever made, just from a game standpoint. And then also, I didn't even mention the online offering that it has that I don't really play. But yeah, it has an entire online offering there with, you have gangs and you can do various activities and game modes and stuff in there. And then the story is immaculate, and that's Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, my only criticism of Red Dead Redemption 2 is that they have this like big expansive world and they have all of these like different things that you can do, but when it comes to mission gameplay, it feels in full stark contrast to what Levin just talked about with Breath of the Wild, where if you go like 15 feet to the right, then it tells you, hey, you're leaving the mission area, get back in the mission area. Like, you can't, there's no like freedom.
I don't know if it does that in the mission, but there is a lot of freedom between missions.
Yeah, there is a lot of freedom between missions. It just feels like it in the same sense of GTA, but GTA is like far more like condensed and kind of your typical like action movie kind of type of game. It's just, that's the only thing that every once in a while takes me out of Red Dead Redemption 2 is when I'm like told to do something the specific way that the game wants me to do it.
I really like that because I feel like it's the part of the Hauser brothers and what they're bringing to it, especially with the missions. They have a story to tell you. Whereas Breath of the Wild, like, I don't have to be rude, but like, that's not some deeply emphatic, just game-changing story narrative. It's like the game is about the exploration, and it is in Red Dead 2, but it's more of it acts as more of a sim rather than like a kind of, I don't know, it's not really about the emergent fucking with the physics as it is about the realistic nature of what it's like to exist as the cowboy or the gangster in that time, in that place, and like running around, and how it's like, oh, I look to my right and there's a mile of like pasture and forest. It's like, what the fuck's there? And they're like, yeah, that's the point. This isn't fucking Skyrim, This isn't, I don't know, the miniaturized map to as much of a degree as Forza Horizon. It's like, yeah, it's because that's where you are. You're in a fucking field. And when you go through that field, maybe you'll encounter a wolf or a fucking woodpecker to hunt or some shit. And there's a lot of that stuff. And it's about, and they really make it a point, like some other games have done before, I guess what some people see in Death Stranding, which there is a lot of time sometimes between the traveling, between areas and missions, but that's supposed to be part of the experience. Like, they know, they're not stupid. They know that it sometimes takes a while to ride your horse from one area to another. But they're like, yeah, that's what the game is trying to be, So it's a lot of that there. And the Hauser brothers, rather, just have some incredible writing shots. It's really arguable, like Arthur Morgan and his arc and the characters in that gang are, some of the best, or if not the best story in games. It really is, especially with all the themes it simultaneously tackles. It's crazy. It's a really great game.
Yeah, that's fair. I get it definitely being on the list. I personally prefer Red Dead Redemption 1. But I get like 2 being people also preferring 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the story, in my opinion, I like, and I think, like I said, 1 is really enhanced by 2. like John Marston's entire arc and the characters in that game, some of the gang members that show back up.
Yeah.
And all that. And yeah, and the whole map of Red Dead Redemption 1 is in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Do you have anything to add on that, Levin?
Yeah, so I have definitely points of what both of you are saying that I agree with. Caleb, I definitely agree with, like, I think the world of that game is amazing. The amount of detail, I don't know how much. It's a very expensive world, let's put it that way, but there's like so much detail to that world, and like to the point where like you can like almost smell like the atmosphere of that game if you like really playing it on a great TV.
That's what a 1,200 person studio gets you.
Yeah.
And just to interrupt, I noticed, I talked to Jaren at the time, of how much I noticed riding my horse in Assassin's Creed Odyssey that year when it came out after Red Dead was so inferior. I was like, oh my god, riding your horse in Red Dead Redemption 2 is like, feels like riding a horse or something. And then you ride your horse in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and you can tell the difference, like, very severely. Be like, oh, one of these things is like riding a horse. One of these things is like a video game designer having to make you ride a horse in a game. Like that kind of thing, you know? Like, it's very different. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that world, and just going off of what you're saying with the horses, like the fact that they put that much effort into animating all of those muscles in those horses, just contracting as they're like running, is mind-blowing. Something that you wouldn't even notice unless you actually really focused on it and saw, oh shit, they put so much detail into this. I think that story is one of the most incredible stories that has ever been told in a game. Some of the best characters, some of the best character arcs. But I also agree with Jaren in that I feel like the story mission structure doesn't work super well with the open world. And I'll give the example of, like, there's a mission where you have to get to an enemy who is on the second floor of a building and in a special room. And I had already been in that building before, and so I knew that if I just climb the stairs around the outside and just go through the window, I can get directly to that room. But as soon as I try to do that, the game tells me I'm out of bounds and I failed the mission. Because what it actually wants me to do is go through the front door and kill all the enemies on the first floor, then go up to the second floor, then kill those enemies, and then go to the room. And I feel like it was, like, there's a lot of missions that I feel like were structured that way that feel kind of maybe I shouldn't say counterintuitive, because it depends on, like, what type of game you want. But I also think about previous Rockstar games, for example, like in GTA 3 or Vice City. If you need to kill someone and you know that they're gonna get into a car and drive away, you could play the mission normally of like, hey, they're gonna drive away, you get in your car, you crash their car a bunch, or you could just plant C4 on that car before the mission starts, trigger the mission, they get in the car, and then you trigger the C4. And so, like, that level of openness, I feel like, has, like, kind of lost its way as they've gone on and made more and more, like, a story-focused games.
There are some counters to that. I guess they, I mean, it goes into the thing of them wanting to tell a specific story. So even though you've been in that building before and you climbed the window, they're maybe saying, okay, well, in our story, Arthur didn't know that. And the fact that you did, that's fair. But then it also plays into, you go upstairs, it's like, if there's a cutscene or anything, it's like, what if the guys downstairs barged through the door because you didn't kill them? So it's like, I get what you're saying about the emerging gameplay too. Maybe there's a bug they encountered in that instance that it just wouldn't, I don't know, maybe something, because it's such a huge ass game. And like, there was a bug in Fallout New Vegas where they couldn't figure out what the fuck was making people's game crash or whatever the hell. And it was something about wearing a cowboy hat when you entered the strip, and wearing that cowboy hat fucked the game. And you're like, okay, great. And so I don't know if that's what it has to do with it. But I don't necessarily fault a game like that for not giving me every option to tackle a mission, especially if it's trying to direct me along a very linear story, even though it's an open world game, because it's an open world game with exploration, but in the missions, they're trying to tell Arthur's story. Although I do give credence to the idea of it's like, yeah, I guess it could be a bit more dynamic, and that would still help it out. Like, they could do that.
Yeah, I feel the only reason that Levin and I hit it on that, and that's like hitting it on it to go from like a 10 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I still don't think it's not a 10 out of 10 game, even regardless.
Yeah, that the only reason we hit it on it was because, like, even from GTA 5 down, like, that's a thing that you can do in like previous GTA or Rockstar games, is that they do give you that freedom.
Yeah, there are no, that's true, that's fair, but it's just like, there are no other Rockstar games like Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, you could say GTA 5, but I don't know, man. Like, there's something about Red Dead Redemption 2 that's just on some sort of fucking level where it's like, Jesus.
Yeah, you know? I guess it's time for my third. Here's where I start getting into mostly story-driven stuff, which is my favorite.
Okay. Bit of a shift here.
Yeah. And number 3, Portal 2.
God damn it, Jaron. That's my number 2. That saves us some time, Jaron.
There you go. So Caleb and I can both talk about Portal 2 here, but this
is your number 3?
This is my number 3.
Okay.
This is my I love the narrative of this game. How do you say her name? Like Chell?
It's Chell. It's Chell.
Yeah. So Chell, even though she's
maybe Shell, it's either Shell,
Chell, whatever. She's the silent like protagonist, so she really doesn't have anything to do. But you do will find out her name in like a offshoot room where it's like written on the wall and that kind of thing. They have all these like little intricate details that tell you more about the story, and like the fantastic voice acting of Wheatley.
Yeah. And to throw it out real quick, I want to interrupt, but I want to give people context if they haven't played it. So Portal 2 is made by Valve, and a studio known for its engines and obviously Steam and things like that. So they start off, and it's a kind of Portal's a shoot off of Half-Life. They take place in the same universe, although that's not really a point of the game. This is you have to pick up through context clues in the environment, which is a big point of the game. Yeah. But in Portal 1, you take the place of a character, called Shell, and the game is about you being in this facility called Aperture. It's the Aperture. Is the company,
Aperture.
And you're in Aperture Science, and you're in this facility, and it's a competitor to Black Mesa, which is a company in the Half-Life series, very prominent, and they're just like a competitor, and that's kind of the premise for this. And you take the place of this person who's in this facility where this AI GLaDOS, who's this female like robot, who's like I'm not even gonna try to do the voice, but she's very sarcastic, but in a robot way, and it creates a lot of humor. And what her goal is to test you through these various the gameplay is you solving these puzzles, and she has to test you to, I guess, gather data for the company, and you do that, and then in the first one you kind of break through toward the end and escape, and then at the end you like escape the facility because turns out she's trapping you in there, and then at the end you escape, but she pulls you back in, and then Portal 2 takes place like they literally say 50 to 55,000 or something years after that, like 50 years to like 50,000 years, sometime in there. You wake up and the facility's decrepit. And it's broken down, and it's like everything's falling apart, and this AI called Wheatley, wakes you up. He's like this other, like, kind of smaller AI guy who's like a guide, British man, voice actor, very prominent, and he's hilarious. And it's some of the best voice acting ever in a video game. And he guides you through the facility crumbling around, and then your objective is you have to fight GLaDOS again, who's still trying to keep you in this facility. But now everything's falling apart, and so that's what changes the map, and a lot more areas open up. But go ahead, Jaron. That's kind of the premise to Portal.
Yeah, and in terms of like it being the successor to Portal, this, in my opinion, is one of the best sequels, not only in video games, but in the entirety of entertainment.
That's true.
Across like history, because it builds on every aspect of the first game and makes it better. There isn't one thing that you can point to in this game and be like, the first Portal's better than Portal 2. And Portal 1 is like a top-notch game as well.
Yeah, it's really solid. For those of you who don't know, by the way, you probably do. Portal, you have a portal gun. That's the premise. You get a portal gun, and a lot of these puzzles you solve by using the portals, you shoot one color on one wall, and then you shoot another color on another wall, or the floor, or whatever. Just like in Splitgate, you fucking children. And then you go through the portal, and now you're somewhere else, and you use that to solve puzzles that get crazy. And you can put portals under objects and then on somewhere else. And so the object will fall through the portal and land somewhere else, and use this to get creative, to move around the area, like the world, and solve puzzles, and that's how you progress. That's the gameplay of it.
Yeah, and this is like a complete contrast to my last two games, where it's a game that pretty much is perfect in terms of like its execution and like not having bugs really, and it's mixed with like clever puzzles and fantastic gameplay, and the main story is just like top tier. Like the whole progression, your interactions with GLaDOS, how you're almost like building a relationship with her in the sense of like she wants to kill you, but she still kind of like respects you almost. And then Wheatley's kind of your sidekick along the way that is like providing commentary to what's going on because your character doesn't speak.
It's a very frenemy relationship with GLaDOS, and she highly respects you, but she's very funny towards you, but also she's like trying to kill you, and it's like hilarious in that way. Yeah. And Wheatley's like this hilarious counterpart trying to guide you. Spoilers for this fucking billion-year-old game. Halfway through, around mission 6 or something, you fight GLaDOS again, and basically you transfer her, I think, into a fucking potato. And then Wheatley gets control of the facility, like takes GLaDOS's place, and he turns evil. And now you get thrown miles into a chasm toward the bottom of the facility, and miles down. And now you have GLaDOS potato on your gun, talking to you, shitting on you, as you have to work your way through the base layer of the aperture science and go all the way work back up to fight Wheatley again. And you get new mechanics like this goo shit that lets you bounce and move at high speeds and things, that like different gameplay mechanics that weren't in the original Portal. And way different environments, because the first one is pretty stale with all just kind of white walls and very facility-like, science-like, and then at the end you break through and you're like going behind the panels and it's very dingy and shit. And a big part of this game is the environmental storytelling. So it's one of those games where the world feels really alive. You're not just playing a game. You're not going through a third Call of Duty level. It's really environmental storytelling. Like, there's a whole side character about the Rat Man from the first game, with shit and messages written all on the walls behind panels and in secret rooms that you have to access using very specific portals and various way 30 miles away that you can look over like a ocean under the ground and shoot over there, and you just find shit. And that's like the environmental storytelling of it. And it's one of those perfect games where the story is amazing and the gameplay is just as amazing, which is very rare. Usually it's one or the other. But this game has the exploration element, the mechanics and physics, because obviously you can fuck around with objects that you can pick up, and it's like a Valve game, like Half-Life, you know? And you use the portals to do various shit, and that makes for some amazing gameplay moments. But it's also the story. The voice acting is like a 10 out of 10 from these characters. The story is amazing. You learn in Portal 2, you meet the founder of Aperture Science. What is it? His name's Cave something?
Cave Johnson.
Cave Johnson, who has these recordings that are funny as shit, and it's great.
Yeah, and it also has that tacked on, which you would assume it's tacked on because they didn't even really talk about it that much, and it just kind of shows up, that co-op mode, but that co-op mode's also fantastic, and the story in that's solid too.
Exactly, yeah. So unlike the first game, Portal 2, there's tacked on, not part of the campaign, but co-op levels that you can tackle with a friend. And so you think working, just using portals by yourself is fun. Oh boy. Wait till you get two people fucking with portals, like a bunch of idiots. And they have these two robot characters that you are. I don't remember their names, like Peabody and something else or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember Peabody and I can't remember.
I don't know, but they're like different shit. One's like a circular orb, the other's like an oval.
Yeah.
And they're just characters, man. And then GLaDOS is like navigating them through, and she just shits on you the whole time, and it's really great.
Yeah, it's because it takes place. It's supposed to take place after the game finishes, right? Because you put her back in charge, and then she starts testing robots instead of humans.
Yeah, at the end, exactly. You are actually escape. And then she shoots, a love cube at you out in the shack.
Yep.
And so you're out in the world now, eat shit, go away, and now she's back in charge. And yeah, that's kind of like the epilogue.
And it's Peabody and Atlas, by the way.
There you go, Peabody and Atlas.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. Unless Levin has something to add on to Portal 2, we can give him his second game.
Okay, so my second game is Portal 2. But I'll throw out there that, so when I finished Portal 2, my immediate reaction was, this makes Portal 1 feel like a demo. Like, that is the amount of leap ahead that Portal 2 made.
It really does, man. I played Portal 1 after Portal 2, so on the orange box, and it does feel like Portal 2 pitch meeting for like to the board. You're like, here's our idea for a Portal game, and it's like, cool, and then they made Portal 2, and that was the game.
I will say that I do think that Portal 1 does give the audience a bit more trust in like figuring out the story for themselves, whereas Portal 2 is more about just like making sure that you understand the story, even though it does still have a lot of the environmental stuff. But yeah, Portal 2 is leaps and leaps ahead of Portal 1 for me. And I still think of Portal 1 as a damn near perfect game, but Portal 2 is just that much more significant of a game. And also that when you guys were talking about the co-op, that completely made me remember of like, that was the era where so many publishers were trying to fight against used game sales, and so they kept shoehorning in multiplayer, and Portal 2's co-op is like one of the few actual successful examples of that, where like everything else was just like, okay, you put multiplayer into BioShock 2, like it didn't, like shit that didn't make any sense, right? But like it was perfect for Portal 2.
Yeah, it couldn't have been better. They nailed that, and it seemed like they didn't even put that much effort into it in terms of just how you saw the marketing, you saw everything like around it, and then they were like, oh yeah, co-op, but then the co-op was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
There you go. That's Portal 2. Now we can let Levin tell us about his number 2 game, which isn't Portal 2.
It's Portal 1.
It's Half-Life 2. No, it's Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped.
I honestly didn't expect that.
That was the last game.
No one expects that.
Of all games.
No one expects that. But yes, if you want a PS1 exclusive until they got remade and put out on other systems, I'm one of the few people in the world who think that first Crash Bandicoot game sucks. And I know there's a lot of people that really love that game. I fucking hated it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Tell them to eat shit, leaving.
Yeah, they should eat shit.
I played it when it came out, and I don't like it either.
They should eat shit and fall off their horse. Or Crash 1 was basically like, like the way people talk about Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs, and basically like the first game of a series being a proof of concept more than an actual game. That's the way I thought about Crash Bandicoot 1. Now, I agree with people that say that Crash 2 is better than 3. I don't think that 3 is the best, but it's the one that connected the most with me because
that's fair.
It's one of those few games that came out in the 90s that made me really think about the structure of a game. So I'm just gonna fucking spoil this game because whatever, it's not really all that story focused.
I was gonna play
it. you beat Cortex at the end, and he goes, "Oh no!" After beating each world, you fight a boss, and then beating that boss unlocks a new special ability. So like the second world, when you beat Dingo Dial, he puts up these ice walls around him, right? And the idea is that you have to trick him into shooting down his own ice wall barriers that he put up to protect himself, but he's shooting through his own barrier to try to shoot at you. And the idea being that like you're tricking him into shooting down his barrier so that you can get into the barrier and then hit him and then jump back out before his backpack explodes. And when you beat him, you unlock the double jump, which just allows you to, instead of tricking him into shooting down his own barriers, you can just double jump over the barriers and then hit him and then double jump back out, right? And so every boss is like that, of the secret, or not the secret, but the ability that you unlock by beating the boss is then the exact ability in that game that you can use to speedrun beating that boss. And then when you beat the whole game, you unlock the sprint shoes. And then the game goes, okay, now you've unlocked time trials. And it's like, okay, you've given me the ability to run in this game for beating it, while giving me the ability to speedrun every boss, and now it's saying, okay, now use all of those abilities to go back through the whole game again and speedrun them now that you have all these abilities unlocked, right? And so I don't think that's like some amazingly special thing, but it was one of those few games where like growing up as a kid, finally like recognizing, hey, okay, there's actual design to making a game. It's not just, hey, here's a sequence of levels.
It didn't just happen.
Yeah.
People put it together, and there's design and intent.
Yes. Like things work together.
It's hard to create something that works the first way through very well, and then when you get a whole bunch of new abilities, it still works when you come back through it a second time.
I don't know if that's on anybody's list, but the best way that's done is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where you play the entire game, and then in the end you like do a first fight, and then literally the map flips on its head, and you realize that the map is entirely playable upside down. Which is a feat in gaming.
Yeah, I actually did beat Symphony of the Night earlier this year. That game is incredible.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a little bit off, but yeah, to the point of game design and that kind of thing.
But yeah, like just seeing how well a developer went, hey, we're not just going to make a sequence of levels, we're going to make sure that all this ties well into each other. And then how that then goes into like a secret world, and then realizing that, hey, there are branching paths. When you have all those new abilities, that now all of a sudden you can figure out that some levels actually do have branching paths that connect to other levels, and then you enter other levels through other levels, and then collect whatever gems or whatever secrets that you can get from there. And yeah, I just thought that was just really smart and mind-blowing for my 8-year-old brain.
You didn't think this was the best Crash game. You just think this is your favorite.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say I didn't think I'd get to a point where anybody said their number 2 game on their list, then said another game in the same series was better, and then still convinced me that the one that they picked is the better pick.
Yeah, I was like fine with it. I was just, what do you think the best Crash game is? 4?
I think 2 is.
But did you play 4?
I have not played 4 yet. No, I really should.
I heard a lot of great things, and I just, even if it wasn't nostalgically the best, I would just think from the modern gameplay standpoint that it would objectively be better. But I don't know,
Yeah, I think my main thing that I think holds back Crash 3 quality-wise is that it does go a bit into... It goes a bit heavy into gimmicky levels, like, hey, now you're riding on a polar bear... No, wait, sorry, polar bear was 2. Now you're riding on a tiger, and now you're flying in a plane, or, like, things like that. Like, it does have a bit too much in the way of gimmicky levels, because, like, that was around the time where platformers started to not sell super well, and so they just needed some kind of gimmick to hook people on more, and so you saw that happen more in the PS2 era, where now all of a sudden, like, Jak 2 is a GTA clone, and the Sly Cooper games were like mini game collections.
Jak and Daxter, the best mascot platformers.
SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom.
Yep.
Shut the fuck up, Jared. So leaving, yeah, you should play Far Cry. Fucking Crash Bandicoot 4, dude, and it'd probably have a good time. And then you can cry because Activision's never making another one of those forever. So
yeah,
that'll be
they
fun.
finally nail it after decades of getting it wrong, and they're just like,
And then put them on Call of Duty.
yeah, pretty much.
Why not?
That's how Activision works. First they diddle their employees, and then they put them on Call of Duty.
That's how I do it. Jaren, what's your number 2?
Oh yeah, true, because we already hit yours. And now,
Yeah, well, you hit mine. Let's be honest.
And now here to spoil Caleb's number 1, it's hate. No,
Shut the fuck up. Don't
My number 2 is probably the most controversial game that's going to be on anybody's list. Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, that's one of the few games by them that I actually like.
The only reason I'm okay with it is because I know you and I know me and I played the game. But I understand how a normal human being with a functional brain might question that decision. Go ahead.
Tales from the Borderlands is, I think, the best Telltale game because they nailed the story and the overall like mechanics of the game to the highest point up until like their newer games where they actually started using a proper engine. And that's basically what I have here. Is it isn't in the same league mechanically or visually as any of these games, but I love it the second most of any game ever made. And a big reason for this is Borderlands as a whole used to be my favorite series of video games at the point that I played this game. And then somehow a game came in that has absolutely none of the Borderlands like mechanics that make Borderlands and made itself my favorite Borderlands game.
It is crazy, Jaren. I've known Jaren for many, many years, and he talked about, Borderlands is my favorite series of games, and then Tales from the Borderlands, made by totally different people, came out, and he played it like 5 times, and it's an adventure game. Like, it's just, you choose your dialogue options as you go through, and there are some QTEs, but they're branching paths, I guess, slightly, and different decisions you can make along the way. But he's like, I played it like 8 times, and it's just, I mean, I guess there's an argument that this is the best adventure game. There's an argument.
For me, it is. For me, it's the best adventure game. I could see other people disagreeing, especially if they don't have a connection with Borderlands. But I feel like even a lot of people who don't have a connection with Borderlands still really liked this game and like the style of humor. And now we're starting to see this style of humor like put into other games, specifically like Obsidian games.
So who does this follow, Jaren? What is this about? What is this game about? Some people don't know.
This follows Reese and Fiona, who are 2 separate characters from entirely different walks of life. Reese is from this big space corporation that is basically out to conquer the entire galaxy or destroy it, I guess.
Hyperion.
If Handsome Jack is still installed with, Hyperion. And then Fiona is kind of this person who lives on Pandora, who's kind of just been stuck in her ways and basically just doing crime to make a little bit amount of money here and survive. And they get thrown together in kind of this crazy circumstances while they search for a vault key, which is supplied by Reese, but the vault key turns out to be fake. And then all this kind of stuff kicks off, which somehow results in Reese becoming the head of Atlas, which is another company in the Borderlands universe. And all this kind of like crazy shenanigans occurs throughout it. And it has one of like the best characters with that is basically not even a real character. It's like an inanimate object. It's the best relationship that I've ever had with a character that isn't even like a person. And that was like Loaderbot, with probably one of the coolest reveals ever in a game, where I don't even know if like I should spoil it because I feel like a lot of people haven't played this game, even though it came out a while ago. So if you do listen to this podcast, go and play Tales from the Borderlands and like get to experience this reveal for yourself. Because although I said that Reese becomes like the CEO of Atlas, that isn't really the big turnaround of this game or even the main part of the plot.
Yeah, and you encounter a lot of Borderlands characters along the way, even though the main cast isn't really Borderlands characters, and that's what makes it cool, because you don't have to be a Borderlands fan to like this game. You might think you do, you don't. You really don't. It's a total standalone experience. And Jaren didn't mention the best part, which is the soundtrack.
Oh yes, every Borderlands game begins with a song and an opening kind of like credit scene. And the best part about this game is that every episode starts with one of those scenes and every song in each of those scenes is an absolute banger.
Yeah, some of the some songs that aren't even popular that Jaren, like one of the third episode's song became like one of his favorite bands now.
Yeah, my favorite artist, Twin Shadow, provides the third song, which is To the Top in episode number 3. And
even if you're interested in these games on Jaren's behalf, go to YouTube and just look up look up Tales from the Borderlands To the Top scene on YouTube and just watch that and see if that tickles your fancy.
There you go. And yeah, that's my like number 2. I know it probably won't be anyone else's number 2, maybe across the globe, but it's my number 2.
When I take a number 2 later, I'll think about you, Jaren. Levin, did you play this game?
Yeah, I love this game. This is one of the few Telltale games that I played more than once, and not just because I wanted to get all the trophies, even though I did.
Did you like this game best of the Telltale games?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you played them all? Did you play every Telltale game?
All of them. When you say all, I'm assuming you mean from like Walking Dead onwards, right? From like New Engine onwards.
Yeah, Walking Dead. I don't count Back to the Future or the other one.
Yeah, there was like Sam and Max and Jurassic Park, but I played through the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead. I played the first season of Batman. I don't remember what else I played. There's probably at least one other one I played, but like Tales from the Borderlands, even though I didn't play all of them, that was easily my favorite one by far. Like that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting for me in that, again, going off of what you guys were saying of like, I don't consider myself a Borderlands fan. I enjoy playing them, but I usually play them with like the volume off and a podcast on, right? Like I don't care about the story, I don't care about the characters, but I do like the way those games are structured and the way they play. So it was interesting to like get to Tales from the Borderlands and get to that point of like, oh wow, not only am I like actively enjoying this Borderlands story, like it is like easily like one of my more favorite stories like being told in a game.
The last thing I'll say about this is I'm a bit offended, Jaren, because you know that my favorite Telltale game is The Walking Dead Season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I've played all the Walking Dead games, I think 5 times each. I've played every way you can get any Telltale achievement on Xbox 360, Xbox One, and Windows 10. And so I've played all these games, like all their games, like at least 3 times. Some of them like 5 or 6. And I like The Walking Dead Season 2 best, although that's my personal preference. I think the characters and the story of that arc are really solid and it's very depressing. And I thought about putting it in my top 5 list. I really did. And I decided to go with some other games. And I felt like it would be harder to defend. But I think that you could probably make the solid argument that, yeah, Tales from the Borderlands is the best Telltale game. Maybe one of the best adventure games. I just like The Walking Dead Season 2 more, but that's like a personal thing, I think. Even though I think you can also make the argument that it is the best Telltale game, but I think it's an easier to make the argument for Borderlands, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think Levin would be on my team, but I'm happy that he is.
No one gives The Walking Dead Season 2 its due, Jaren.
Yeah, that's because Season 1's better.
It's not, because you're an idiot, and I explained to you why. Shut up. Everyone says that, and they haven't played the games as much as me, and I promise you their opinions aren't as valid.
I don't know. I'd say I'd like the writing for Season 1 more. I like the playing of Season 2 better.
Both of those things can be true, but I think Season 2 also has better arc with Clementine and everything. That's my opinion. Wait, Jared and I have had a 30-minute conversation about this.
Yeah, we don't have space for it. I'm totally fine with Caleb liking 2 better because I feel like they're both super close.
They're both super close. We can agree. We can all agree there. But yeah, so I guess Levin, is it your number 1 now?
Yeah, it's his big number 1.
God.
Oh my God! If it's a Japanese name, I'm gonna shoot you.
He's gonna give us like Super Mario World. Or something.
Super Mario Brothers 3. Super Mario.
Okay.
Street Fighter 2.
Kind of close. It's my number 1 favorite game of all time is Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest, which
it's a fair
is
game,
a game
to be honest with you. I'm not even mad.
Made by a developer that is currently owned by Microsoft, so I got kind of on brand here at the end.
There you go.
Yeah, dude. 343 Industries. What up?
This was a really special game, and a lot of the things I have to say about Country 2 are very similar to Crash 3 in that...
What system did it come out on?
Super Nintendo.
Okay. Just making sure for everybody. I knew, but I wanted to let everybody out there know. This is an SNES game.
Yeah, I knew his favorite game too, and I didn't want to spoil it. That's why I made the Super Mario World joke.
It's a solid pick. Go ahead, Levin.
Donkey Kong Country 1, very similar to the way I talk about Crash 1, in that like a lot of people really love that game, and I don't think it's a very good game. Like
shots fired.
It's just like a lot of the level design is cool, but it's also like a lot of it's really straightforward. The secrets are it's cool that that it has those kinds of secrets. But I felt like so many of them are just like, hey, jump off a cliff and see what happens. Maybe you might find a secret, or maybe you just die. And all the secrets in one basically just amounted to like, hey, if you collect all the Kong coins, you get a life. If you get 100 bananas, you get a life. If you find a secret and then do all the things in it, you get more lives. Which was also really funny to me because, like, lives didn't save on the save file, they saved in RAM. So if you turn off the game and turned it back on, you went back to a default amount of lives.
Fucked.
Yeah. So it's like all that effort that you put into that game, it's like just, it felt pointless.
Which is awesome. So it sounds like in keeping with your fucking Dark Souls Bloodborne bullshit. All right, cool. That's where it all started, right here. I used to turn off Donkey Kong and it took away all my lives. And now, believe it or not, I'm a big Bloodborne fan. But okay.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Country 2 was like, it was the game that made all those ideas like work really well into like an actual like functional balanced game. So
yeah,
to explain Donkey Kong Country just as a series or gameplay wise, it's you basically play as one of the Kong family members, or basically you play as two of them actually. So the idea being that it's basically a single player game where you're playing as two characters at once, and you hit the select button to swap between them. And each character has different abilities. In Donkey Kong Country 1, obviously, Donkey Kong was like the bigger, stronger one, and then Diddy was the smaller, faster one. Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong is captured, and so you're playing as Diddy and Dixie, where Diddy cartwheels and is faster, and he holds weapons or projectiles in front of him, whereas like Dixie, she can glide across longer distances, but she's a bit slower on the start of her attacks, and she holds projectiles above her rather than in front of her, so she can't use it as a shield. And so there was some interesting balance there. The key thing is that it made secrets work. So like when you think about what Rare does, or I guess what Rare does now is very different, but like what Rare did from like the late 80s until like the early or mid 2000s is that they basically make collectathon games, right? It's basically, hey, you gotta collect 100 eggs in Banjo-Kazooie to do a thing, or 100 feathers to fly, or whatever.
And this one's a 2D platformer.
Yes, this is a 2D platformer. This was the game that really made collectathons like really work for them, where you had, I'll just focus on one specific type of collectible, where you have Creme coins. When you beat a secret, you got a Creme coin. When you beat a world, you got a Creme coin. And you could just play through the game, beat all the worlds, and get to the end and roll credits. You could also, from World 2 onwards, there's a place called Clubber's Kiosk in every world from like World 2 on, where you give him Creme coins, 15 Creme coins each, and he takes you to one level in a secret world. And what you find out is every Clubber's Kiosk across the different worlds in the game all connect to a different level in the secret world. And so once you collect all those Creme coins so that you can afford to get to all the levels and beat all those levels, then there is like this giant crocodile mouth in the middle of that island of the secret world that opens up, and then you fight the true secret final boss, right? And that, again, very similar to what I was talking about with Crash 3 of like, it took ideas and made them into something that felt like, hey, there's a cohesive whole, there's a cohesive middle to this where everything properly flows in and attaches to.
Yeah, it did the sequel thing, like Mass Effect 2 or Assassin's Creed 2 or Donkey Kong Country 2.
But like on top of that, just the soundtrack is amazing. It was composed by David Wise, where...
Wise man.
Yeah.
That's my uncle.
The soundtrack is like a work of black magic, where I don't know how the hell he pulled this off, but like that soundtrack does not sound like it should work on a Super Nintendo. Like there's too much complexity to it.
Those games are amazing. Yeah, they have really iconic soundtracks. The Donkey Kong Country series is really beloved in like that community for people who like 2D platformers or just like SNES titles. And at AGDQ and SGDQ speedrunning events every year, like they're some of the biggest draws are the Donkey Kong Country games, and their soundtracks are immaculate, and they're held in high regard as some of the best 2D platformers.
Oh
ever.
yeah, absolutely.
So it totally makes sense that it's on a list, not my list, but your list.
Yeah, but then in keeping to what I've said about other games on my list, I didn't like Donkey Kong Country 3. I hated Donkey Kong 64, and I don't like the two new retro games.
What about Tropical Freeze?
I didn't
sir?
care about Tropical Freeze or Returns. I think
I'll play
they
one
fucked up the
once
attack.
they put Lanky Kong in there.
Lanky, yeah.
You know Lanky Kong? Yeah, that's my boy.
If they figure out a way to get him in there.
You ever played Donkey Kong 64?
Yeah, that game was trash.
Yeah. Oh, how dare you! Shut the fuck up, Levin. You remember in the rap in the beginning? First of all, you already should know it's a great game when you heard that rap in the beginning. Second of all, when they said they got the Lanky Kong, they're like, he has no style, he has no grace. Remember that shit? This Kong has a funny face, and you're like, that's my dude. That's me. I'm Lanky Kong.
And who made this game?
This was made by Microsoft's own Rare.
There you go. Greatest studio in video games, according to Levin.
Yeah, that's what he said. To be fair, Sea of Thieves is immaculate. It's arguably their best product to date. I mean, people can argue that, but just based on the over 20 million players, it's an absurd successful accomplishment with Sea of Thieves. There's no other game like Sea of Thieves. They're still innovating on that game. Totally unrelated to what Levin said, but I'm just saying it. Just throwing it out there.
All right, Caleb. Well, since you've already started, might as well hop over to your number one.
Sea of Thieves. No, I'm kidding. My number one, Jaren. What's my number one? How predictable am I as a young white man? What's my favorite game?
Halo 3.
Halo 3. Jaren knows it. Halo 3 is my favorite game of all time, and I have a lot of successful arguments for this. Jaren and I actually talked about it. Not that we were talking about it as being my favorite game, although he knew. But we were talking about Halo 2 and Halo 3 last night, and so we already went over a lot of this. So, Jaren, you'll be hearing this again, but for the audience, hey, everyone knows I'm a Halo fan. You may have learned when I got a Chinese copy of Halo the Master Chief Collection to earn all the achievements again. You may have figured that out. But yeah, Halo 3. Man, what can I say about Halo 3, Jaren? What can I say about it that hasn't been said? You know everything about it.
Yeah, not as
Everyone
good as
knows.
2.
You can be an idiot if you want with your dumb brain, but go ahead. Levin's on my side. Get the fuck out of here. Halo 3 has everything going for it. From sound design, starting off, the iconic Halo 3 soundtrack, and finish the fight, which it added to this soundtrack, which is now in the marketing for Halo Infinite because it's so goddamn iconic too. Marty O'Donnell, once again the composer. It was the capstone on a trilogy that is one of the best trilogies in video games and is an iconic first-person shooter trilogy and wraps up the Master Chief's first, story. Maybe even his only story, depending on how infinite it is, if we count Halo 4, 5, and 6. But, The big part about this game, though, that is great about it, is how it combines the elements that we talked about with, like, Portal 2 and kind of Dead Space with, like, the physics of the game, and how that kind of coalesces into a game that almost has everything going for it. The campaign story, while more of a blockbuster-esque story, has the thing that it needs most, which is that it has lore and a actual developed real world behind it and established, because a lot of games fail at this, about establishing a lore and really creating a living world. But Halo isn't one of those. It has one of the best fleshed out science fiction lore that exists, honestly. Like with all the expanded IP and media. Even at this time, they had a lot of novels about it, and as well as the games themselves. And Bungie does a great job at that, too. So the game design is immaculate from the standpoint of a first-person shooter and the balancing and the enemy designs and all of that. The equipment that it added that innovated on Halo 2, now that you have things like bubble shields and energy drains and all that kind of stuff. And the story, everyone agrees Halo 3 had a great conclusion with the campaign. And with epic, blockbuster moments, that really was a good capstone of the trilogy. And with the Arbiter, you play as the Master Chief primarily in this one. But the things that really make it stand out as the best game of all time isn't just the campaign. That's not really what it's about. It's about everything that it included within its package, because it had the campaign, which was insane and awesome, and is infinitely replayable to this day. People who play it, things know. If anybody of you listen to Chris Raygun, a YouTuber, talk about this, he's made videos on Halo about how infinitely replayable it is, and how it really is just enhanced by its game design. It also has a multiplayer feature set that is impeccable, with going off of Halo 2, which Jaren mentioned, the multiplayer and the design from that, which really kicked off. There are arguments that people have made that Halo 2 was one of the first, if not the first, really successful social media and that kind of way. And Halo 3 really innovated on that too, with the actually getting into lobbies and communicating over mic and having this competitive kind of environment in 2004. And then this game came out in 2007. The level designs for the multiplayer are insane, based on whether it was DLC maps, I think it was Sandbox, or whether it was the open area of Sand Trap and all the hidden secrets that people tried to figure out for years in the subreddits based on different codes and shit that's under there. There's a secret in that map that's still undiscovered, and other things in the multiplayer. Everyone already knows all this stuff, so it's really hard to explain because nothing's really revolutionary. Everyone knows this. But then you get into something like Forge that this game added, which Jaren made the point to me last night of PC games had, modding. But, Halo 3 really took that idea and they made an actual customization tool within this first-person shooter game to develop maps and game modes that could then be saved and shared between people as files. And had like a whole custom game component to it. That then 343 would take some of these custom games and make them real game modes in the actual multiplayer, like for limited times or whatever. So there was like a whole, besides just the regular shooter multiplayer, they had things like infected mode, where like people would run around with swords and with high speed and they enabled, and other people would be slower like humans with pistols, and you would have like a zombie hunt, and you could turn the saturation up super high and turn the lighting down lower in the map, and use the different parts from various structures to create different maps within different maps, and like different buildings, and have weapon spawns and different spawn locations that you could just create different game modes and things. There were kart racers in Halo 3. There were all kinds of different games you could play. And I mean, Achievement Hunter, like companies like Achievement Hunter made whole series about different games in Halo 3 and like game modes like that. And so they had this customization and sharing option that was super unique, that made it more than just a simple first-person shooter. Same thing with theater mode was really revolutionary. No games really had something like that before, at least that I'm aware of, where you could actually capture footage and go back in and edit it and use different camera angles and free roam and add various things to it and then share those clips. It really was almost like a social media platform and a really alive, vibrant multiplayer that was both good on its own, but then had these other components that made it fantastic, specifically custom games and it is based a lot around community and a co-op element. Because the game is fantastic on its own, and I still play it to this day. I have like 29 days played in like Halo the Master Chief Collection, and that's not counting the Chinese Master Chief Collection, and that's not counting Halo 3 on the 360, or all those other games that are like I played on their own. But I've played these games so much, and there is still stuff you can learn, and the physics that you can fuck with the gravity hammer. Grenade jumps are just a part of the game, using grenades to propel your momentum up to various steps, and all kinds of physics-based things, like someone throwing an overshield or a bubble shield down on the ground, and a video of a dude throwing his grav lift onto the bubble shield to make it launch into the air so that he could then shoot that guy who was behind cover. Just shit like that, and all the vehicle mechanics and things. And it's just a really phenomenal, I mean, I'm kind of rambling, but it's just a phenomenal shooter. It's one of the best shooters ever made, if not I would argue it's the best shooter ever made. You could debate me on that, but it has so much going for it that it's hard to just talk about one thing, because everything's great about that game. And it's revolutionary at the same time, with its customization, map editing, multiplayer, file sharing functionality that really makes it its own social media in 2007.
Halo 3 and Halo 2 were both in my top 15 games.
Yeah, it's really immaculate. And the other people, I'm pretty bad at explaining, and especially at what do you call it, like just right now on the moment. But people have made videos that really dive deep into Halo 3 and everything's so special about it, and that do a better job than I do. But Jaron, I think I know what your top game is.
God of War?
No, young white man, very predictable young white man. It's The Last of Us.
That is, in fact, my number one game. In my opinion, the greatest narrative video game ever created. Naughty Dog's best game, and probably one of the best voice-acted and written video games in history. And the exact opposite to Portal 1 to Portal 2.
Written by Neil Druckmann, right?
Yeah, written by Neil Druckmann. Essentially, the game it came out in a time where everybody was starting to get tired of zombie games, and then somehow they created the greatest zombie video game during a time where everyone was tired of playing zombie video games.
Yeah.
And I remember when this came out in 2013, and I got it for right at the end of the PS3 generation, and I sat down and I was like ready to play another Naughty Dog game, as the Uncharted games before that, along with Borderlands, were probably my favorite series. And I picked it up, and it opens with that scene with his daughter, Sarah, and you're just kind of like hanging out with her, and she gives you the watch, and I was like enjoying it, all that kind of thing. Then like the explosion in the background with her watching it on the news, and then everything kind of just goes to shit, where the entire world is like all of a sudden overtaken by zombies, or in the sense of this, it's a virus that happens to ants. They're doing in this game, and
cordyceps, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, and then the scene that where his daughter like kind of gets shot, which is kind of the propulsion of the entire game's narrative arc, which, no matter how many times I see that and other scenes from this game, it always brings tears to me every single time I watch them. Even if I just watch someone else play through it in a YouTube video, it happens, and I like remember back to playing those games, or that game, for the very first time. And
there's something to say about this game, because you mentioned it's in the height of zombie era stuff, and it's like, Left 4 Dead came out in 2008, and The Walking Dead first season came out in 2010. And so this was like during the third season, or like 2013 maybe, third or fourth season.
Yeah,
so
Nazi zombies.
So so in video games, zombies were prominent a little bit longer, but in the mainstream, zombies had really hit their stride. Like that's the height of zombie popularity, really, is about that time.
Yeah.
But in video games, they had been out a little longer and had become a bit trite at that point. And yet they released this game because, it went into development way sooner.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, and that's a big... So the fact that it overcame that hurdle on its own and became one of the best games ever made, definitively, is amazing.
I guess to add on to that as well, of not only was that an era where zombie shooters, or just zombie games in general, were becoming really oversaturated, it was also an era where damn near every AAA publisher was deathly afraid of doing a horror game. So you had a lot of horror series that just pushed into way more of an action direction, like with Resident Evil 5 and 6, Dead Space 3. And so it was just this thing of like, no AAA game or no AAA publisher wants to financially risk making a AAA horror game. And to see then Sony and Naughty Dog do that, have it be as successful as it was this really cool, impactful moment that then opened up the doors for things like, hey, Alien Isolation that came out a bit over a year after that.
The Evil Within.
It was a really cool, Evil Within as well, yeah. Like, it really helped reopen that door for horror games on that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Point. And it has one of the most succinct and kind of well-told narrative arcs, even though some people take it in an entirely different way, where it's 50% of the community sees Joel as the good guy and 50% of the community sees Joel as the bad guy. And it's both, I guess, are right for certain elements, where it kind of falls somewhere in the middle, and it's a very gray area during the apocalypse on whether he's good or bad. And then Ellie and Joel's just chemistry and voice acting among Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson is fantastic. All the behind the scenes stuff from the making of that game is crazy. The way that Naughty Dog hand animates faces because they don't like the way that motion capture faces look a lot of the time. So they hand do it themselves, and just the level and attention of detail to all the little things. And lots of people criticize the combat, and that's their hit on the game. But I feel it's weird to criticize the combat in a game where they put a multiplayer mode into it, and everyone somehow, I think people like that as PlayStation's best effort at making a multiplayer game.
Yeah, to the point where the sequel now they were going to make a multiplayer component, and it got so big that they branched it off to be its own thing that's still not out yet.
Yeah, it's just the entire thing is just wild across the board. And it's my favorite game of all time. I thought about it, but it was funny when I was making my list, the two things that were bolded right at the top, number 1 and 2, in the way that I wrote them out too, when I was which games do I want to put down on this list? The first 2 games that I put were The Last of Us and Tales from the Borderlands. And those were always my number 2 start to back, and they've been my number 2 for ever since they both came out. My number 1 and 2.
I don't think it's super debatable that the best 2 narrative games that maybe there's some indie games that do things very, very, very well that you can make arguments for. But in the mainstream, I guess, the best, storied video games, I would argue, are Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Last of Us Part 1, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who can think that Arthur's story and, everything that happens with the gang in Red Dead Redemption 2 is not in the top 3 best narratives of all in video games, and their arcs and the themes and everything. And then, The Last of Us is much more of there's fewer characters, and it's much more focused, and the voice acting is, carries it a lot, because it's so good,
Yeah, I'm glad that, surprisingly, the Xbox podcast hit all 3 platforms with their best overall games.
That's how you know we're not biased.
And I feel if we all had to vote on each other's lists, I feel the collective number 1 of this podcast would probably have been Portal 2.
Oh yeah,
probably. Yeah, if you do the overlap, I think Portal 2. It's a good point.
So we hit PC too.
Yeah, this was really solid, man.
It's really long, but anyone that stayed around this long and listened to it, thanks.
This stands though. This stands on its own, and we're not biased. Halo 3 is my favorite game of all time, but narratively speaking, I don't think it's the best narrative. It's just kind of a whole package and then gameplay and everything. And I think Jared and I have talked about, if we're talking about the best game of all time from a feature set, think everyone should agree that World of Warcraft or GTA 5 is that, just from everything a game has to offer, you know?
Yeah, it's like Levin and I have talked about before, where everyone's best game of all time is very subset on their own decisions of like, and their own thoughts of what they feel like makes a video game.
Exactly. Like Jaren went more with like narrative, and I went more with like a combination of like social aspect with, you know, gameplay and physics. And then Levin went just really precise 2D platforming. and with a lot of charm, character, and sound and design behind it.
And
really
he picked
focused.
a lot of things where they were like the first iteration of something in a video game that kind of made that like almost entire genre and brought to life like many other video games.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, is there anything anybody wants to add in? A number 6 that was really close, but just give it as like a brief, like the name. We don't need to like defend the entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can just read off, man. Some honorable mentions here. Just honorable mentions: Assassin's Creed 2, Celeste, Dear Esther, maybe one I would include: Guitar Hero 2, Rock Band 2, the whole Halo MCC, really. You know, Mass Effect 2 and 3, Minecraft, Pokemon Silver, Sayonara Wild Hearts. I wouldn't say it's the best in my top 5, but it's just really great. And then, yeah, I already mentioned The Walking Dead Season 2. Jaren mentioned Skyrim. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy: The Duelist Linked Evolution. Let's go. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Do you have some extras to add in, Levin, that were really close to making your list?
I guess some honorable mentions are the original Golden Sun, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Overwatch, but we don't talk about them anymore.
People like Final Fantasy Tactics. I don't play it. I've never seen any gameplay from it, but I've heard it. People like it.
I love that game. Pokemon Gold. I know you said Silver. I lean towards Gold.
Yeah, you can be wrong. It's fine. It's no worries.
I'll throw out 2 more here. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX and Mortal Kombat 9.
Okay. I mean, I like Levin. I like Levin's eclectic. He has so many different tastes than I do, but it's so unique, you know.
The end of my top 10 were number 10, Minecraft, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, number 9, Red Dead Redemption, number 8, Halo 2, number 7, and Rock Band 2, number 6.
Very solid. Rock Band 2, you had that in there too, Jarna. I thought about it. I thought about it real hard.
It almost knocked GTA out of the top 5.
Yeah, that's fair. I really thought about it.
And that is the end of this X-Block podcast special. If you would like to hear us somewhere else than you're listening to us right now, you can head over to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, anything that Anchor supports, or if you like getting your podcasts on YouTube, you can head over to YouTube, the X-Block Podcast. If you would like to follow us outside of the podcast, you can head over to Twitter at X-Block Podcast. You can head over to Instagram at X-Block Podcast. And you can also head over to our Twitch or our Patreon, which Caleb can tell you about quickly, and then we will finish up.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, dude, go over to Twitter, you know, at X-Block Podcast, and let us know if you want to hear the 5 worst games of all time.
God of War.
Yeah, but, you know, go over a few of those later. But yeah, dude, you can go to Twitch, _Xblock on Twitch. You can follow us. One day we'll fucking finally stream, and you will get a notification if you follow us now. And then patreon.com/Xblock Podcast. Throw us $3,000 so that we can buy things like a microphone, looking at Shure SMB7 or SM7Bs rather, maybe, you know, a PC. I know Jaren got a new one, but I don't have one yet. Just throw, if you liked this, there's a place you can go to make an offering, you know, to the gods of podcasting, leave it included. And, you know, go over there, patreon.com/Xblock Podcast for more of the worst content you've ever heard.
Yep. Tell your friend, tell your mom, tell your grandma, head over to the cemetery, and if you see people standing around, let them know about the X-Block Podcast. They've lost a loved one. I'd like to be their new loved one.
Yeah, go knock on Levin's window in the middle of the night and whisper, X-Block Podcast, right in his ear.
Any last words, Levin?
Not much. Just thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Anytime.
X-Block Podcast.
X-Block out.
Thanks for listening to the X Block. New episodes every Monday at 5 a.m.